My dad texted me, "You're no longer part of the company. Lawyer will contact you soon." I didn't respond, just transferred my shares quietly, and 2 days later, my sister called nonstop, begging me to reverse it. I'm 38, and this whole nightmare started quietly, like a slow leak you don't notice until the basement is flooding. My family owns a manufacturing business, mid-sized, steady, and something my dad, Richard, built from the ground up. When I was fresh out of college, I jumped in headfirst, eager to prove myself. My sister Harper, a few years younger, always acted like she was too important to bother with the day-to-day. Designer bags, exotic trips, and social events were her world. The business was mine. For years, I worked side by side with Dad. I managed clients, improved operations, and modernized parts of the company he was stubborn about changing. I thought we were a team. At least, that's what I told myself. But there was always this unspoken thing between Harper and Dad. He treated her like the perfect daughter, the golden kid who could do no wrong, even when she showed little interest in the business and made no effort to contribute. I was the hard worker he always criticized but depended on. In the last year, I noticed Dad pulling away from me slowly. It started with missed phone calls, then meetings where I wasn't invited. The projects I once led were suddenly handed off to consultants or Harper's friends. I chalked it up to him aging and maybe wanting to lessen his workload. But then came last Tuesday. I was at home, just finishing dinner, when I saw a text from Dad pop up. "You're no longer part of the company. Lawyer will contact you soon." No warning, no explanation, just those cold words. I stared at the screen, waiting for more, but nothing came. No calls, no emails, silence. I didn't respond. Honestly, part of me felt numb. The other part was furious. After everything I'd done, years of sacrifices, late nights, missed birthdays, I got kicked out by a simple text. Typical Dad. Always more comfortable hiding behind his pride and silence than having a real conversation. That night, I went through the shareholder documents carefully. I discovered that a significant chunk of my shares was still in my name. Shares I'd never touched or mentioned because I believed my place in the company was secure as part of the family legacy. But now, those shares felt like a weapon I could use. So, quietly, I transferred them into a trust one controlled, making sure I had some say in what happened next. No fanfare, no announcements, just a quiet move to protect what was mine. Then, 2 days later, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Harper. At first, I ignored it. But eventually, I answered. Her voice was frantic, breathless even. "You can't do this. Dad's devastated. He says you're tearing the family apart. You have to fix this." I tried to stay calm, but inside I was shaking. Harper's pleas turned to accusations. She said I was selfish, greedy, and destroying everything Dad built. I reminded her I never wanted to destroy anything. I just wanted fairness. She laughed bitterly. "Fairness? You think you're the only one who's worked hard? You act like you own the company, but you're nothing without Dad's name behind you." I wanted to say so much back, but I held my tongue. I told her I needed time. I couldn't make decisions under pressure. She hung up with a slammed, "You'll regret this." That call was the start of the slow unraveling. The next morning, I got a message from a lawyer I hadn't heard of, asking me to come in to discuss my status in the company. Dad's attorney. The legal notice basically said my role was terminated and my access revoked. It felt like a power play, designed to intimidate me. I started hearing things from mutual contacts, harsh whispers from the office that I was out, that Dad and Harper were spinning stories about me being disloyal, difficult, and unfit to lead. None of it was true, but with the family's reputation on the line, lies spread fast. Harper's behavior got worse too. She showed up unannounced at my place one afternoon, eyes flashing with that entitled, smug look I've hated for years. "You're making a huge mistake. Dad's offered me the top spot. You could have stayed, but you chose to burn bridges." I told her bluntly, "I'm not interested in a poisoned throne." She scoffed and walked away, but I could see in her eyes she thought she'd already won. Behind the scenes, Dad was tightening his grip on the company, locking me out of financial reports, cutting me off from key contacts, and rallying the board to his side. But I wasn't done yet. The morning of the board meeting felt heavy, like the air itself was weighed down by everything that had been brewing between me and Dad for months. I arrived at the company's headquarters early, my palms sweaty despite telling myself I was ready for whatever came. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew it wouldn't be friendly. The boardroom was stark and cold, with a long polished table and leather chairs that looked designed more for intimidation than comfort. Most of the seats were already filled when I stepped in. Dad sat at the head, wearing that calm but unyielding expression he always puts on when he thinks he's in control. Harper was there too, sitting beside him, arms crossed, looking like she was trying way too hard to appear unimpressed. A few board members nodded politely as I walked in, but the atmosphere was tense. "Good morning, everyone," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I understand this meeting is about my role in the company." Dad didn't look at me. Instead, he cleared his throat and said, "Let's get right to the point. As I informed you all, we have decided to remove Alexandra from all managerial duties effective immediately." A murmur rippled around the room. I swallowed and replied, "That's a surprise to me. I've seen no formal review or explanation. Can you clarify why this decision was made without notifying me properly?" Harper smirked, and Dad's eyes finally met mine, cold and sharp. "We've discussed this for months. Your performance, your attitude, it's been a liability. We cannot have someone undermining leadership from within." I shook my head. "Undermining? I've been trying to save this company from outdated practices you refuse to change. You're freezing me out because you don't want to listen." Dad's voice dropped. "You forget who built this company. You're just a cog in the machine, Alexandra. And if you don't understand your place, then we have no choice." Harper chimed in, her voice dripping with condescension. "Maybe if you weren't so obsessed with control, Dad wouldn't have to step in and fix things." The room grew colder. I could see some board members exchanging glances, probably weighing which side to support. I realized I was fighting not just my dad and sister, but the entire family legacy they'd built their lives on. I took a deep breath. I'm here as a shareholder, too. I haven't been given any formal notice to remove me or buy out my shares. Dad gave a slow, deliberate smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We have lawyers working on that. You'll be contacted soon." The meeting proceeded with Dad outlining plans to restructure the company without me, emphasizing Harper's fresh vision and commitment. It felt surreal, like I was watching them rewrite the history of my own life in real time. After the formal part ended, a few board members quietly approached me. Some expressed sympathy, others cautioning me to be careful. The message was clear: Dad had the upper hand, and they weren't willing to cross him lightly. Later that day, I received a call from my lawyer, confirming that Dad's team was preparing legal documents to force a buyout of my shares. But thanks to the trust I'd quietly created, my position was more secure than they realized. It was a small victory, but it bought me time. Meanwhile, Harper's calls and texts became relentless. She switched from begging to threats, telling me I was tearing the family apart and making Dad sick. She even showed up at my apartment again, this time accompanied by one of Dad's trusted executives, someone who looked more like a bodyguard than a business colleague. They tried to convince me in person to step down, painting vivid pictures of Dad's failing health and the family's desperation. It was manipulative and cruel. Harper's voice was sharp, almost gleeful as she said, "You don't want to be the one who broke Dad's heart, do you?" I stood my ground, but inside, a storm was building. Years of feeling undervalued, overshadowed by Harper's charm and Dad's favoritism, exploded into a bitter resolve. I wasn't going to back down. That weekend, I found an email in my inbox from Harper titled "Family Emergency." It was filled with guilt-tripping language about Dad's poor condition, stress caused by the ongoing conflict, and pleas for me to do the right thing. Reading it, I realized how far they were willing to go to manipulate me emotionally, to turn what should be a business disagreement into a personal attack. I decided to respond calmly, but firmly. Dad's health and the family's well-being matter to me, but I will not be bullied or pushed out without cause. If the company's future is truly the priority, let's negotiate fairly and transparently. No reply came, only silence. Days later, the tension hit a breaking point at a company event meant to celebrate a new product launch. I was not invited, of course, but I heard through the grapevine that Harper made a point of publicly downplaying my contributions, crediting herself and Dad for the entire project. It wasn't just business anymore. It was personal. A battle for respect, recognition, and maybe something deeper, vindication for years of feeling overlooked and dismissed. After the launch event, where I wasn't even allowed a seat at the table, I realized the family was playing a different game now. It wasn't just about control of the company anymore. They wanted to erase me from the story completely. For days after, I stayed mostly quiet. I knew if I let emotions drive me, I'd make mistakes. Instead, I focused on what I could do behind the scenes. I had contacts, some of the original shareholders, and a few board members who weren't thrilled with how Dad and Harper had taken over. They were worried about the company's future, and more importantly, they were tired of the drama poisoning the leadership. One by one, I started reaching out. Private calls, discreet meetings over coffee, casual catch-ups where I listened more than I spoke. I laid out my concerns, the risk of the company losing its reputation, the damage caused by family drama bleeding into business decisions, and the value I could still bring if given the chance. Not everyone was eager to listen. Some of Dad's loyalists had been warned to keep their distance, but a handful quietly acknowledged they shared my worries. They weren't blind to how Harper had been elevated despite having no real business experience, or how Dad's stubbornness was blinding him to critical threats. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, Mrs. Carter, a longtime shareholder and one of the original investors who had backed Dad in the early days. She'd always been supportive of me, even when the family wasn't. Over coffee, she told me something I'll never forget. "Alexandra, your father built this company. Yes, but he didn't build it to be ruled by fear or family feuds. You have the vision it needs now, but you have to be strategic. This isn't just a business fight. It's a battle for the company's soul." Her words stung because they echoed everything I felt but had struggled to admit. I wasn't just fighting my family. I was fighting for the legacy I believed in. Meanwhile, Dad and Harper continued their campaign to isolate me. The emails became more hostile, disguised as formal business correspondence but filled with accusations of disloyalty and incompetence. Harper's social media posts started to subtly mock me, photos of family dinners without me, stories about moving forward and new beginnings, all carefully curated to make it look like I'd been the problem. Then came the unexpected blow. One afternoon, my assistant called to tell me that a confidential memo had leaked to the press. It was a company-wide announcement from Dad's legal team stating that I was suspended from all operations pending an investigation into allegations of misconduct. I sat frozen, disbelief sinking in. There were no allegations, no complaints from colleagues. This was purely a power move to discredit me publicly. The board had been complicit in allowing it, too. I spent that night drafting a statement to clear my name internally, but the damage was done. The media caught wind, and questions started to circulate outside the company. Clients and partners called, worried about stability. My phone buzzed with messages from friends and former colleagues offering support. Harper's satisfaction was almost tangible. At a gala event a few nights later, I overheard her boasting to a friend, "They're finally seeing who's really in charge." But I refused to let this break me. Instead, I doubled down. With Mrs. Carter's backing, I arranged a special shareholders meeting, one that wasn't publicized and where I could present my case directly to the people who mattered most. I spent days preparing my presentation. Financials, future growth strategies, market analysis, all the data to show that the company's current path was heading toward ruin if it stayed under Dad and Harper's control. The night before the meeting, I barely slept. The stakes were enormous. If I lost, I'd be out for good, my shares forcibly bought at a fraction of their value, and my reputation in tatters. But if I won, I might have a chance to reclaim my place and maybe, just maybe, force a reckoning. When the day came, the room was thick with tension. Dad showed up looking like he was ready for battle, Harper at his side, smirking like she already had the victory in her pocket. I started by calmly outlining the risks, the stagnation, the recent PR disasters, and the toxic environment created by family feuds. I showed projections of what the company could be with modern leadership and shared testimonials from loyal clients who had already expressed concerns. Halfway through, Dad interrupted, his voice icy. "This isn't just about numbers, Alexandra. It's about trust and loyalty. You've broken both." Harper rolled her eyes. "Maybe if you stopped pretending to be the savior and admitted you never understood the business, this wouldn't be happening." I held my ground. Trust and loyalty aren't built on exclusion and silent threats. They're earned through respect and transparency. You sidelined me, cut me out without reason, and now you want to force me out. That's not leadership. The room was divided. Some board members looked uncomfortable, others clearly sided with Dad. The vote was called to decide whether I would remain a shareholder with voting rights. When the final tally was read, it was razor close. I had lost the vote by a single percentage point. It was a crushing blow. But then, as the meeting ended, a surprise announcement came from Mrs. Carter. She revealed she had secretly acquired additional shares through other investors who shared her vision. Together, they controlled just enough to block any forced buyout of my shares without a full shareholder vote. The room erupted in murmurs. Dad's face tightened. Harper looked stunned. I felt a flicker of hope. We left the meeting with no clear winner, but it was obvious that the family feud was now a war, with the company caught in the crossfire. Afterward, Harper's behavior turned darker. She sent texts accusing me of sabotage and betrayal. She even went as far as calling our extended family to spread rumors about my disloyalty and greedy ambitions. Dad was quieter but no less dangerous. His emails were terse, his meetings cold and calculated. I knew he was planning something bigger. That's when the calls started, the relentless ones. Harper's voice, pleading at first, then desperate, then furious. "You have to reverse what you did with the shares," she said one evening. "Dad is breaking. You're destroying the family." I told her no. She begged, she threatened, she tried every angle. After the shareholder meeting, the house of cards my family had built began to tremble. I could feel the shift under my feet, a tremor of opportunity that I had long waited for. Dad and Harper were used to getting their way. They operated like a well-oiled machine, wielding their power with ruthless efficiency. But I had quietly gathered allies, and I wasn't about to let them steamroll me anymore. I knew that to truly turn the tide, I had to hit where it hurt most: their control, their image, and their precious family legacy. The first step was the company's financials. For years, I had quietly monitored internal reports and dug into operations. What I found was worse than I expected. Dad had been authorizing questionable contracts and funneling company resources into side ventures that benefited him and Harper personally, ventures no one else knew about. It wasn't illegal, exactly, but it was unethical and definitely against the company's bylaws. I had enough to start a serious inquiry. I took the data to Mrs. Carter and a few trusted board members. Together, we drafted a motion to demand an independent audit of the company's finances. It was a direct challenge to Dad's authority, but it was also a bombshell that could expose the family's greed and reckless management. When I presented the motion to the board, Dad's face went pale. Harper's smile vanished. The room froze in a silence heavy enough to choke on. "This is an attack on the family," Dad spat. "It's an attack on the company," I replied evenly. "And if that company is built on shaky foundations, it deserves to be exposed." The vote was tight, but the motion passed. The audit began in secret. As the investigators dug deeper, whispers of irregularities leaked to the press, subtle, anonymous tips that started turning public opinion. The family's carefully crafted image began to crack. Meanwhile, Dad and Harper scrambled to control the damage. Harper ramped up her smear campaign against me, calling me reckless and accusing me of wanting to destroy everything they had built. But the public wasn't buying it anymore. Articles started to appear praising my calls for transparency while questioning the integrity of the leadership. It was a slow burn, but it was working. Then came the turning point. At the next board meeting, the auditors presented their findings. The report detailed misappropriations of company funds, conflicts of interest, and decisions made to benefit personal projects rather than the company's growth. Several board members who had been silent started asking tough questions. Dad tried to dismiss the report as biased, but the evidence was strong. Harper's smug confidence cracked as accusations flew. She tried to deflect blame onto me, claiming I was orchestrating a coup for personal gain. But I let the facts speak for themselves. With Mrs. Carter's support, I called for a vote of no confidence in the current leadership. The tension was palpable as the votes were cast. When the results came in, Dad and Harper had lost their seats on the board. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Dad's expression twisted into something unreadable: pride, anger, betrayal, all tangled together. Harper's eyes flashed with rage. "You think this is over?" she hissed. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Freed from their control, I moved quickly to stabilize the company. I implemented new policies, brought in external consultants, and worked hard to repair relationships with clients and employees. But the family wasn't done with me yet. Within days, Dad launched a legal assault, suing me and the board over alleged breach of fiduciary duty. Harper flooded social media with half-truths and distortions, rallying supporters to paint me as a villain. The personal attacks intensified. Family members I thought distant sent harsh messages accusing me of betrayal and greed. The very people who had built their lives around the company now tried to ruin me. But I had prepared for this. I released a carefully crafted statement to shareholders and the press, outlining the facts, the audit findings, and my vision for the company's future. It was transparent, professional, and powerful. Slowly, the tide turned. Support for Dad and Harper's faction crumbled as more details emerged about their mismanagement. I was ready for the final move. At the next shareholder meeting, I revealed that I had quietly secured a majority of shares from small investors who were tired of the family drama and eager for real change. With that majority, I proposed a new board and a plan to buy out Dad and Harper's remaining shares at fair market value. but only on the condition that they step away entirely. The room was stunned. Dad's fury was barely contained as he realized his grip was slipping for good. Harper, no longer able to mask her desperation, lashed out in front of everyone, accusing me of destroying the family, of being a traitor, of everything she could think of to discredit me. But I stood firm. "I'm not here to destroy my family," I said quietly, "but I am here to protect the company we all claim to love. If that means making hard choices, so be it." The vote passed overwhelmingly. Dad and Harper were forced out. After Dad and Harper were forced out, the company started its slow climb back to stability. I made sure to surround myself with people who valued professionalism over family drama, seasoned executives, loyal employees who had been sidelined during the chaos, and fresh advisors who brought new perspectives. The wounds left by years of manipulation weren't easy to heal, but we were making progress. The first few months were a blur of meetings, strategy sessions, and rebuilding trust with clients who'd started doubting our leadership. I worked harder than ever, but I never forgot the lessons I learned from the past. This company wasn't just a business, it was my legacy, and I was determined to protect it from anyone who tried to exploit it. Meanwhile, the family's attempts to undermine me continued, but they grew weaker and more desperate. Dad's lawsuit was dismissed after the courts found no merit in his claims. Harper's social media campaign backfired spectacularly when several former insiders came forward, revealing the toxic tactics she and Dad had used to consolidate power. The public turned against them, and they became a cautionary tale in local business circles. Family events became a battleground. Invitations stopped coming. Mutual acquaintances I once trusted began to distance themselves, wary of the family drama. But I didn't care. I was done trying to be the peacemaker or the forgiving daughter. Their betrayal ran too deep. One day, I received a message from Harper, short, cold, and bitter. "You've won this round. But don't think this is the end." I never responded. The truth was, I didn't need to. I had what they wanted: control, respect, and a future free from their interference. They had nothing left but their grudges and their ruined reputations. In the end, I reclaimed not just my shares, but my dignity. The company's growth resumed under clear, fair leadership, and the toxic shadows of the past were replaced by cautious optimism. Dad and Harper? They remained on the outside, watching from a distance, powerless and isolated. The family they thought they controlled had moved on without them. Their greed and entitlement cost them everything, and they had no one to blame but themselves. As for me, I finally felt free. Not because I forgave them, but because I stopped letting them define me. I'm running the company my way now, and that's the real victory.